Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Telescopes.net. My name is Daniel Mounsey, a.k.a. Dr. D, your host. And today we're going to discuss some books. These are my own personal books, some of my collection, some of my extensive collection. I have many more books. And some of these books have been around since the 80s and the 90s and on into the 2000s. And, you know, we take books for granted. It's incredible. I can sell a telescope for $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, and I cannot get a person to spend 20 bucks on a book. It's incredible. You know, it's like, well, I spent $5,000, but it's just too much money to spend an extra 20 bucks on that book. And it's really ironic because the book is so fundamentally important. Part of the reason people think that, and I know that for a fact, is because of computers. Now, books are printed from computers and whatnot, but we can use them in the field. They make great tools for field use, and there's different ones for stars. There's some for binoculars. There's some for looking at the moon, very specific targets. And today I want to kind of cover more specifically what these books are for, what they do, their function, and what kind of telescopes you should be utilized with certain books to get the most out of them. And today I want to help you understand that because I've been doing it for many, many years. I'm very experienced with books. I can tell you about anything, pretty much about all the books you see here. So stay tuned. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to be right back with some details on specific books and why. Let me tell you about each book, right? I want to give you an idea what each book does, okay? For example, we have the Night Sky Observer's Guide by Keppel and Sander. It comes in 3 volumes. They do the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere volume. This is the original one, which was shot, most of the photographs and things that you see inside this book were shot with film. And, you know, there's a lot of contributors to this book. And on the newer ones, you'll see that they've used advanced CCD technology to help remove the saturation on some of the images here. This is a beautiful book because Craig Crossan does some of the detailed information about globular clusters and open clusters. I mean, you can see there's a lot of armchair reading right here. But the idea behind this is to help you understand what it is you're looking at, whatever it may be. And then as you go into the more seasonal, detailed observational parts of the book, you can go through each object. It gives you like the sizes, the magnitudes, the appearances. There is some brief astrophysical information about the objects to help you understand them. That mostly pertains to the Messier objects and some unusual stars and things of that sort. But most of this is an observer's guide. This is something you would take out in the field with you to help give you an idea of what the objects appear like in various type telescopes. Another thing that was interesting is there's Burnham's Celestial Handbook. Burnham's Celestial Handbook is a very famous book in its time, back in an early era of the 70s. And it was around at a time where people were using small telescopes, say 60 millimeters on up to like 12.5-inch telescopes. We didn't really have that. And during the 80s and 90s, there was a bi-monthly column that was done, and it was all consolidated into 3 volumes eventually. And it became Night Sky Observer's Guide. But the important thing is that with the advent of larger mirrors, up to 20 inches, there was just more objects that became visible. So they came out with this companion instead to look at fainter and fainter clusters that are not listed in here. Now these are completely different books though. Keppel doesn't, is not attempting to replicate what Burnham did. They're just 2 different sources and they have different purposes. So inside each constellation there's a section on double stars, and then there's a section on deep sky objects, and there's even highlights on binocular objects. So I really feel the point of this here and about this book is it's important, in my opinion, that even if you have a telescope, you should have a good companion guide to go with it. You shouldn't just rely solely on computer programs. They don't necessarily teach you how to observe. These things do that. Computers have a lot of data in them. You can set parameters and things like that with like magnitudes and things like that. But this really is an essential guide. It's a companion. It'll teach you how to observe. And it's just something computers don't do the same way. So I highly recommend this book for that. Let me tell you about Backyard Astronomer's Guide. We had a discussion on Backyard Astronomer's Guide. I said have my own copy. This is actually the copy I purchased sometime around '93. And I still use it to this very day. I've got bookmarks on it. I've got, highlights on some of the pages and things that I refer to. You'll see I've marked up the books. I know people like to take care of their books. I'm one of those people. I don't care. The book is designed to be used, and that's what I do with them. And there's a lot of information. But the internet, like a lot of people go on the internet for information. One of the things I have, like, we're using the internet now to do these videos, of course. But the point is that I want to make is that when beginners often tell me when they go into forums, they come out more confused than they were when they initially went in. They're more confused after they get out of the forums because there's so many varying opinions of everything. And what I say to do is follow a fundamental book like this that's written by experts who have tons of experience, because there's a lot of people who don't have experience. And experience is a very important thing, because through that time you've accumulated, you've learned what different telescopes do, what different observational sites are like. It's just endless. And this is a very reputable book. The only thing that changes over time in the newer editions is mainly the computer programs and the astrophotography aspects of it. But all the observational parts of it are fundamentally correct. That doesn't change. And it's nice to go back to the roots of things, because we tend to get lost in some of the modern technology and we forget where our roots come from. And this goes back to your roots. This explains all the fundamental things that we want to know about telescopes. And I can't stress enough what a special book this is, even to this very day. And if people read it, they would understand so much more, and it would be less confused when they go into the forums, because you can get so misinformed in forums. There's a lot of bad information out there. So try to go to a book, learn some of the essential things, and it's really a great way to go. Burnham's is a really incredible book, and I will tell you. There's hardbound editions. It was done by Dover Publications. There's volume 1, 2, and 3. There's a third volume. I have all the volumes here today. Burnham's is to me the most important book that was ever written in astronomy. And the reason that I say that is because of the diversity of objects that are covered is so extraordinary to me. And the astrophysical information, which changes, even Burnham stated in his volume 1, that no astrophysical information can remain up to date for more than about a year. So it changes quite rapidly. But the fundamental parts of it are very good, even by today's standards. Of course, there are some things that need to be updated, and there's new technologies, there's new satellites, there's new space probes that are diving into things that Burnham would never have known at his time. But there's 3 volumes to it. It's extremely heartfelt information, and one of the things I love about Burnham and why it's become my favorite book, as you can see, I have my volumes. These are still used to this very day. A lot of people think that it's just a armchair read. That is so not true, I guarantee you. The reason these books are put in this fashion, are spiral bounded, is because I want them to stay open at night. Sometimes when books are fresh and new, they close, the spines are very stiff and they don't stay open, and that's what happens, so I spiral bound these things. And these are the original copies I had gotten in the early 90s, and I still use them to this very day as of 2017. I still open them and I still use them in the field. What's special about it? Well, if I go in here to double stars, okay, this is something people don't realize. So we go into Aquila right here. This chapter is really special. It's important because if you own a small telescope, you can go and observe the night sky right from your home, from your backyard, with this section of the book. This section here allows you to observe from a city because it covers double and multiple stars, and I suggest that you use a small telescope for this. If you want to view deep sky objects, you can go into the deep sky objects, because they have variables, double stars and variables, and then they go into deep sky objects. So here you'll see there's a whole section here on deep sky objects right here. And this is the kind of thing you would, this is the list that you would use if you were going to a dark sky. That's what this is for. So, and it gives you all this astrophysical information about the stars, so that it's just more interesting when you're looking at them. So I basically give you an overview, right? 3 volumes, like I said, it covers all the 88 constellations on here. It was published around the late 70s, and I still recommend it to this very day. The other thing, too, that's special about it, and I can go into more details about it later, is that he has a vision of mental models. In other words, Burnham Everything he did was mental models. He used analogies, like if the Milky Way were shrunk down to the size of the United States, the solar system would be in a coffee mug in Arizona. And these types of things go on and on throughout this entire series of books with Burnham's. And it helps you visualize how vast the universe is, so I love it for that reason. So, there are two fundamental books, if you go anywhere you want to go online and read about it. Two fundamental books you'll hear about is Turn Left at Orion and Night Watch. This is one of the earlier editions of Night Watch. This is my copy. It's been revised since. But let's talk about Night Watch here. The reason this is such an important book is because the visualization, the layman terms, the way everything is written out is so colorful and so easy to understand that any person that's just starting out can learn this so easily. And it has section on the seasons and the constellations, and then there's more detailed maps in the back, whereas if you want to start using binoculars and telescopes, you can go into the more detailed parts here. It breaks the sky up into seasons, and that's what's important about Night Watch, why I recommend it. It teaches you about the Flamsteed, numbers of, the constellations. It tells you about the Greek alphabet. Why is that? All those basic things are covered in here, and it teaches you how to observe with the naked eye and with a pair of binoculars. It talks about comets and things that we see with our naked eye. There's meteor showers. They have dates and solar eclipses and things like that, all covered in this book. And even to this day, I'll sometimes refer to this book for certain things, so I highly recommend it. Deep Sky Wonders is written by Sue French. Now, if I were to summarize Deep Sky Wonders, I would basically say it's a scaled-down version of NSOG. Deep Sky Wonders is basically a scaled-down version of NSOG to me. They're very similar in their formats of how things are described. Sue French is a great observer. Most of the observations she does are with 4-inch, 5-inch refractors and 10-inch Newtonians, and then in from time to time, some bigger scopes. But what's neat about it is she's covering things that can be seen in medium or smaller telescopes, and I like that about this book. The interior is color in it, and a lot of people, this is just kind of funny, people don't want to mark up books. Mine's a little bit torn, I admit, and marred up a little bit. But they're designed to be used in the field. I don't know why people are so adamant that these are books that you sit and read at home. They're not. They're actually designed so that you can use them in the field with a red flashlight. And the lists are right there. They give you the magnitudes, the distances and the scales and sizes of objects. So there's some brief astrophysical information about some of the objects. It's all done in color. It's really nice. These are monthly columns from Sky and Telescope magazine. Sue French is a wonderful observer, and she just covers all these little things. But it's great, and I think it's important to find a visual companion that you're comfortable using and take it in the field and use it with you. Set it next to your telescope. Get yourself a red flashlight. Don't just rely on computers to do everything. That's the cop-out. People always think they can just come in, buy a computerized telescope, and voila, everything's there. It's like, well, what is that? It's like everything's designed to help you not understand what's going on in the night sky. And that's what some of these books do. They help you understand those things. So I highly recommend this book as an observational guide that you would take out in the field and utilize with a red flashlight. Set up a workstation, get a table going. I mean, that's what I do. That's why these books are used. Because I started out with this book. You can see it's a little worn. And then, you move into these kinds of books to get more detailed objects and information, and this is a great way to do it. These are right now, currently, basically, I really love these books. I'll tell you why. They dive into a lot of history about observation. Burnham does the same thing. Burnham's comes in a 3-volume set, okay? I have 1 volume, volume 2 here. Annals Deep Sky is basically going to be like Burnham's. I think there might inevitably be something like 12 volumes, or 4 and possibly 5 coming up next month. I'm hoping maybe, in the next few months, maybe a 5 is coming out. I know it is eventually going to come out. And something kind of funny, it's kind of intriguing here, just to give you an idea about this. People don't know. If you want an idea about where these volumes are going, there's a model of the Milky Way is obviously here. By the time the Milky Way traverses all the way across, it'll cover all, that's how many volumes there's going to be. I'm thinking somewhere around 12. But what's really great about these books, let me tell you. Well, first off, it's difficult to keep these books open in the field, okay? So you can see that. So what I've done is I've spiral bound my set here. I have a spiral bound set because people say, well, these are not designed to be used in the field. These books are armchair reads. That is a crock of nonsense. These books are absolutely wonderful to use in the field, and I'll tell you why. This is adapted from Starland with a 3-inch telescope by Olcott. Okay, so the book, just so that you know, Adventures in Starland with a 3-inch telescope. So basically that book, Starland with a 3-inch telescope by Olcott in 1909, that book is about $100 used if you can find them. They're kind of rare. It's a very small book. I've actually have a copy of it at a friend's house, and it's remarkable. The pages are yellowed. But what's so cool about this is that Annals has taken that atlas and put it into their series of books here so that you can actually take this map outside at night with a red flashlight and go down this list. They've updated the position angles and separations of the stars so that if you're using a small telescope, you can actually see many of the objects here. And you can do this right from your yard. And they don't teach you that in the forums. Most of what you get taught in the forums is that you need a fancy computerized telescope with great enough aperture to see things. It's not true. This book, this atlas here was designed for 3-inch telescope. 3-inch telescopes, just a little lens like that. That's what works great with this. So this will be like your double stars, and this is just like your Burnham Celestial Handbook. The layout is very similar of the two books. This is basically like Annals Deep Sky is basically like a modern Burnham Celestial Handbook. It's got the latest astrophysical information, and it's unquestionably going to be the standard Bible of our modern time, is Annals of Deep Sky. But if anybody tells you it's really just an armchair read, it's not. There are lists of objects to see in here, and the armchair part of it is what you read. The astrophysical information is what you read during the daytime, and you build mental models of what these objects are about. And then the maps and the lists are so that you can actually use the book in the field and find those objects in the night sky. And then you understand more about what it is you're seeing. That's how these books are designed to be used. They're not just supposed to sit cleanly on a shelf and just be used when you're sitting at home to read only. I think that's just an awful waste, and I don't think that's what the authors would have wanted. I think they would have wanted people to use them. So don't forget, these are not armchair reads only. That's basically my thing here. And this spiral bounding here, which I'm going to do to every single volume here, you can see that I spiral bound my copies here, is so they will stay open in the dark, because these will be used in the dark. That's what they're for. And eventually they'll look like Burnhams.